Good evening, everybody. This is BGG. I am so sorry that we were a little bit late getting started there. I had a serious computer malfunction, and I had to get that straightened out before we took to the air because I couldn't see anything. My computer had a problem. So got it all straightened out, got it fixed. We're ready to go. Huge news cycle today. Before we get to as much news as we can, there's no way we'll cover it all. It's beyond belief how much news is out there today. Before we get to all that, though, I want to make sure that I stop just for a quick second and say thanks to all the people who make Dinar Updates what it is every single day. We could not do it without you. For those who've come before us, for those who are here now, for those who will come after, thank you, everybody. You guys are fantastic. Our mats, chat cappiers, news people who post articles. You guys are awesome. Also want to say thank you to the websites that support us out there, Dinar Updates, IQD Calls, Dinar Recaps. Did I say Dinar Updates? Well, we do support ourselves. Thank you. But anybody who's posted our calls or said something kind about us, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Welcome to the Dinar Updates Roundtable Call with the Dinar Updates crew for Dinar news that really matters. No hashtag fake Dinar news. We don't do that here. No gibberish. We're not making stuff up. We come in on articles, and once in a while we give an opinion. And my opinion is this thing is smoking crazy right now. What say you guys? Okay, they say it's crazy too. I'm going to look up my first. Do what?
I said that's a definite.
Yeah, that's a definite.
Absolutely speechless.
There you go.
You were speechless, Andrew. You were completely speechless.
We were all speechless.
What do you even know? There was a fantastic article that Luke put up first thing this morning. That's the one we started with today. And let me see if I can't find that one real quick. My computer will. Dr. Shabibi came out first thing this morning on, I think what they're talking about, the translation says Sky Press, but I think it was Sky News. The former CBI governor says Maliki wasted money building a new home, blah, 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 blah. Goes through the whole article. Shabibi's just blasting Maliki out of the water, just killing it, just wiping him out. And we talked about this a little bit on the chat room just a minute ago. You know, we did chat from like we're going to try and do it from 6:30 to 7:30, but we had to bail out a little bit early to get lined up for this call, and lucky we did, because my computer decided to be a little funky. So, but we did start out with that commentary, and that was the first article was from earlier this morning. Luke brought that, and he talked about the Shabibi article, where he just blasted Maliki off the map. It's pretty rare he does that, by the way. What's your commentary about that? What's your thoughts on that, Luke?
When I read it, I was stunned. I mean, because he came out basically. I mean, what he says the money received by al-Maliki was enough to build a home that could accommodate up to 30 million people. What's the current population of Iraq? Census has it around 31 million. So he's saying that he could have built a home that would have housed everybody in Iraq. I mean, that's huge. And then he goes in and he names the departments that he actually filled, the different positions that he filled at the central bank and how they related to the money laundering. I mean, the director of money laundering department, the director of legal department, the director of bank surveillance, and the director of economics. So basically, it is pretty clear how the money laundering and that corruption and how they were able to siphon so much money out of the CBI with those four positions being foxes guarding the hen house. And then,
you know,
go on.
Here's how this ties into the investment, because the first question somebody's going to ask is, what does all this mean to me? Well, here's exactly what it means to you. If and we believe that if Mosul is part of the price tag for Iraq's reintegration, and if combating corruption, and if national reconciliation, if those three things are as critical as we believe them to be, by the way, they're being done right now. They're being handled right now. And this here is blatant, plain forward, direct evidence that they are handling this stuff. If you believe that those are issues, and I'm sure they are, if you look at the letter of understanding, memorandum, the MOU and the LOI, this right here is exactly what they talk about. So obviously they're dealing with this. If those are the things that, if you've read anything that we've said before, how all of this Maliki business ties in is basically the world financial system is coming after it. You know, you can't just steal this kind of money and have it go unnoticed. It's impossible. And this line of commentary has come up before that literally all the money that was stolen over the last, I don't know, 10 or 12 years or something could have rebuilt every square inch of Iraq brand spanking new. And I'm not sure that that's not even what he's even saying here in a translational sense. You know, there are several different ways of speaking in the Arabic, and this sounds like to me he basically could have rebuilt the whole country, but instead they stole the money.
Yeah, well, I mean, all the translation tools all use New Modern Arabic for the translation, and there's 8 different common, major dialects, and those are broken to some sub-dialects. So that's why I agree with you that that's what he's alluding to at that. And the thing I found really amazing was that this was the first one of the articles, and then there was 4 other news sources, outlets that actually ran with this article. And in the past, when there's been a Shabidi article, there's maybe been 1 or 2 outlets that have carried it, and they've kind of just died off. I mean, it seemed to be picking up steam. And I just found it very, very interesting that it came right on the heels of the Geneva Peace Conference. And that little
Luke,
yeah?
Luke, you know what's picking up steam is the prosecution of the former Prime Minister Maliki in the news media. He's been prosecuted in the news media, so something's up. Otherwise, they wouldn't run with it.
Well,
I mean,
and here's why that's germane. It's vitally important. They're going to have to move against him. It seems clear. There's going to be some move against him, but they're going to have to have some public support to do it, because there's a very loyal Shia bloc that supports him, who are going to be not very happy when this happens.
And what they're going to do is shame that bloc into supporting the prosecution.
Yeah, they got to make him they got to make Maliki so toxic that nobody wants to be associated with him.
And who's going to be at the front?
It's going to poison them. Who's
going to be at the front of the line? Sauter.
Oh, he can't hardly wait. He just is going to be he's going to be beating that straw man so bad, just every which direction.
He wants to chop his hand off.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a reference to stealing. Typically.
Yes, I know. I'm very clear of that, how they used to prosecute people.
Mr. White's comment, though, about Maliki's been prosecuted in the news media, he absolutely is. But obviously, the dialogue we had in the chat started with this article, and then we rewound a little bit to Abadi this last weekend, met with those officials at The Hague. They had some very serious, apparently very serious conversations about, they didn't come right out and say who and what, but you obviously can draw a number of conclusions, because as soon as he hits the ground, this PR campaign opens up like crazy. The next article, the title of it was actually on the blog, dinarupdates.com/blog. Abadi says, I do not understand Nouri al-Maliki orders the withdrawal of 3 teams from Mosul. He essentially withdrew all of the Iraqi army from Mosul and the north and left all their weapons and tanks to ISIS and came back to Baghdad, is what Abadi said. So there's follow-up article after follow-up article along the same vein where, Abadi's like, I have no idea what this guy was thinking, but he gave a bunch of weapons to the enemy. And then to follow that up is, let me see if I can find this. This is a great article that Pat found. And it says exactly, oh, come on, I had this thing located earlier. Thinking computer.
High treason one?
Yeah. Here it is. Nope. Got it.
There it is.
Here it is.
Al-Maliki will stand before the court soon on charges of high treason.
That was from a body toward Maliki in their public media. This is not being privately prosecuted anymore. This is public.
Yeah, and the timeline he gives is, he says, the time will soon eliminate al-Maliki on charges of high treason.
Mm-hmm. You know, there was a vague reference. There was just a little tiny comment. Here's why all this is coming together right now. Is I believe, and I'm gonna delve into the opinion section here. So this is not fact. This is what I think. I'm just reading the tea leaves here. By the way, over the weekend I did tell you this was going to be a sporty week, and I did say there was going to be a lot about Mosul this week, and they are lighting that place up. And we're only is this Tuesday? Yeah, we're early in the week, so I did say that. Opinion. Here's why all this is happening right now. I firmly believe that Mosul, national reconciliation, and corruption is the price of international acceptance. There was just a vague reference a little bit today in maybe one or two articles, and they talked about this next international bond offering in March, 1st of March. There was a few comments about the first part of March, and this is probably going to be another. It's going to be another budding kind of theme, if you will. But the gist was that the IMF had some decisions and some consultations to make on Iraq's, first of all, their reintegration and their international bond offering. And that was the essentially the verbiage, the impetus behind the comments. And we talked about that just a little tiny bit in the chat room. I just caught a few whiffs of that in a couple of different articles, but you can kind of you can think about, keep that in your little memory bank for the next few days. There's going to be more of that kind of come out. And I would say that that's probably one of the drivers for a lot of what you're seeing right now, because there is Iraq is responding to the world financial communities and things that they've asked. And by the way, this is the early phase of manifestation of exactly what we were talking about in the MOUs and the LOIs. So all that stuff, all the stuff that they talk about, verbatim, line by line by line by line, you're seeing it play out. So I'm gonna leave it open for discussion at this point.
You remember Sunday that a body called for the ICC to bring in the perpetrators of the crimes against the Iraqi people in the international court? Remember that article coming out Sunday, and then all this popping up? So yeah, it's like they're doing they're setting their plans and they're going with their plans.
Exactly.
I agree with you. I'm in complete agreement with you about the price tag of Mosul and at least the start of national reconciliation in some format and their corruption. I mean, it just seems that that's all so intrinsically linked, and they've been working so hard on all those avenues. I mean, it's been forefront in the news, and it's been. It just seems that it's not really that coincidental when you look at it. It's more there's a reason for them doing it, and I don't
want to. Go ahead, Mr. White, and I'll follow up.
And I think there's a caveat to BGG's opinion piece, and part of the reason behind the let's make Maliki toxic is that the the rest of the world, meaning Western Europe, the European Union folks, the United States, and so forth, they don't want there to be any possibility of going back, taking away all the progress that a body has accomplished. When you have Sunnis describing a body as being moderate and non-sectarian, I think the fact that Maliki is still there running around, if there's some folks that are just concerned that there's any possibility of him reverting back to 4 or 5 years ago. And I would just think that those folks, would be saying, we got to make sure this guy has no way of ever getting any support to make a run for the Prime Minister again. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, I was just going to, follow up with. I want to be clear about this. I don't think that a true, there are people that a lot of folks don't really understand the concept, and they kind of toss this phrase around national reconciliation as though it's just a button they can push. I mean, you're talking about bringing three distinctly, and this is a very servile understanding, but you're talking about bringing three very distinct people groups who are totally separate by, appearance, geography, ideology, and religion. They're different in every way. You're talking about bringing three groups together so that they interact in harmony. That's not going to happen overnight. And I don't think anybody's asking for that, and I don't believe in any way, shape, or form that this investment is hinged on that being accomplished. It will not be accomplished, but least
that's decades.
Exactly, it's decades. I mean, but at least the world wants them to get started on it and not act like a bunch of children. And that's pretty much what they've said. They've been plain about it, and obviously a lot of that national reconciliation starts in census, voting, property rights, oil distribution. That's what all of that is tied up in. And I'm not, none of my opinion was tied up in was geared towards a complete national reconciliation. That's not going to happen. And anybody that says that's going to happen, they don't even understand this whole thing to start with. They're not there yet.
Well, they don't understand the cultures that are involved in it. And I mean,
exactly. They're just very
there's
different.
a lot of history, and they're going to have to overcome a lot of their own prejudice towards each other in order for this to be accomplished. And that doesn't change overnight, especially within the Arabic cultures. They have a long memory.
Well, exactly. It's decades, and it's not even, for instance, one of the reasons that they wouldn't allow any of the Shia paramilitary units in any of the frontline combat is because they were just executing such atrocities against a people group they believed to be their mortal adversaries, the Sunnis. They were civilians, children, women. None of it really mattered. So I would beg everyone to take a step back, breathe a little bit. I think that probably, from the IMF, World Bank, UN standpoint, the UN wants to stop the genocide, and they want to push a pause button on all this racism. That's really what it boils down to. And I think they're doing I'm not a big UN fan. I'm even less of a World Bank fan. I'm kind of lukewarm on the IMF. But I would say in this situation, they have used their influence magnificently in this particular situation. And I can give you 100 different reasons on each of those 3 points. But I would say right here, right now, they are turning out some pretty serious results. So, I'm not, it's kind of like a gunfight. It ain't a beauty contest. It's who wins. And at this point, IMF, World Bank, and the United Nations, they're pulling off a pretty solid win right now, in my estimation. So, several things to look for is this. National reconciliation is not a push button. It's not a one-time law. It's not a It's an idea that they're grasping onto, that they're accepting, and that they're moving forward. They're moving that ball down the field. This whole bit about Maliki, and the reason I go through all of that is to say this whole bit about Maliki, this is really, really serious on the national reconciliation front, because he is a serial fomenter. I mean, if you want to pick up the number one guy that is the biggest race baiter essentially in Iraq, it's Maliki. He's done it all for political purposes. Anybody who knows anything about the internal workings of what has happened there knows that he was the number one character in the fall of most of the north of Iraq. He ordered all of the troops to throw down their weapons and leave. And, listen, if troops don't have any backing from their upper echelon, what are they going to do? They'll just do what they're told, best they can, survive. There were a few units that didn't do that, by the way. There was this big op-ed piece about this one unit that did not. They did not follow, and they are still, in fact, they're still in the forefront. It was a great piece I highlighted sometime in the last couple of weeks about these guys, and they completely fill their ranks, keep refilling their ranks, but they never did throw down. They never did surrender. They fought the whole time, and they're still in the forefront, the very front of the.
That's the SWAT, right? From the New Yorker article.
I think so. Yeah, actually, that was the SWAT team that never did. Yeah. They never did throw down the weapons. They never did leave. Their numbers have been decimated over and over and over, but they've refilled constantly.
Trained by our special ops.
Mm-hmm. They have a special
highly
recruiting
trained fighters.
They have a special recruiting regime. You can only get in through a certain number of criteria. You have to have family members or somebody you've lost, loved one close. You can't get in any other way. They have very specific, and then they have a bunch of other things that you're not allowed in if you're not, part of that group. So kind of crazy. Anyway, that's my dissertation. So national reconciliation, the long and the short of it's very complicated. It's never going to be completely done, but they want to see him take the bit, and it looks like, by all accounts, that they are taking the bit. I don't know that there is a way to put it, but I would expect if the same progress that we're seeing right now takes place over the next 30 or 45 days, I would say that the world community who is making the decisions on Iraq they're going to be happy. They're not going to be unhappy, and they'll I don't know what verbiage they'll use in their reports, but it'll be something along the lines of what they have recently, and that is, he laid out 12 points. You got 8 of them. There are 4 you need to work on, but we're approving you anyway. I bet it's going to sound like that because that's what they do. So anyway, guys, comments, thoughts? Somebody's reaching for the button.
No, I just think that there's, the whole that national reconciliation thing. I think you have it right on the money. There's no way that they're going to be getting it completed in any time soon. But they're definitely working that way. And I think that the reason why the world is putting this as an ultimatum is that the world seriously is tired of this part of the world being the breeding ground for terrorism and affecting everybody's lives throughout the globe, and it's constantly being a source of tension and issue. And I think that they finally get it, that they need to address it in some meaningful way, that the citizens actually feel that they're being taken care of. And if that happens, then I think there's a real chance that we'll see that the terrorism recruiting fall off from that area. You're not going to see the Daesh's or the Al-Qaeda having the ability to recruit the people anymore from those regions if people are happy and they're not being, oppressed in the ways that they've been oppressed by the dictators that have come up, or the prime ministers, that are really dictators in disguise. So very encouraging all around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, there's several things But on the national reconciliation front, I see that tossed around a lot, like, oh, they're just going to pass a law or, push a button. That's not what it's about. That's not the way it works.
It's laughable to think that that's what people are thinking.
Exactly. I mean, it's just, and I think the long story short is this. Iraq has already taken the bit on national. They've got this thing in their mouth and they're running with it. So, at some point when the other benchmarks are met, they're going to be in fantastic shape. I mean, and I'm referring back to that kind of vague interpretation even recently. But again, it goes back to a lot of different things I said over the last weeks and months. That the IMF and the World Bank are going to make some determinations very soon on the next bond offerings, and those are going to have to do with these recent benchmarks: Mosul, reconciliation, attacks on corruption. They're not going to put up with the world's money being stolen like it is. It's not going to happen. So,
well, I think it's interesting that economists came out yesterday, and there's been a couple different articles about it, different translations, but basically he says the same thing. He said that the government was ready to, via the central bank, to increase the value of the dinar, but held off because of ISIS. And it's anticipated that as soon as this is dealt with, and he gave two different values. And I think you were talking about this on chat just before breaking off for the call there of BGG. But I read that as just another confirmation, just here is their plan. And, of course, this is an economist. And somebody might say, well, how would he know? Well, why would he be talking about this unless, and I've said this before, this is not an if to them. To them, this is a for sure thing. The question is when. And we've received forecasts after forecast after forecast of them, the CBI and the GOI, anticipating this, and even throw in the ISX, anticipating this. So,
well, we haven't even started talking about just the avalanche of articles in the last 2 days, the 20th and the 21st, of economists, op-eds, hard news about talking about the raising of the price of dinar. This title, "Raise the Price of the Iraqi Dinar to the Floor Again." I mean, that article is crazy. Now, what we're talking about so far is the underlying elements, what the IMF think, United Nations, the big picture kind of stuff. We haven't talked about the little guys on the second, third tier talking about the specifics. We haven't said a word about that yet. And that's just crazy. We've heard some stuff, I would say since November of 2016, we've started hearing a lot of really, pretty dicey stuff. But this kind of stuff, why don't you talk about that article for just a second, Luke?
Which one are you talking about?
The one you posted yesterday, "Raise the Price of the Iraqi Dinar to the Floor Again." That was the op-ed piece by the Iraqi economists.
Oh yeah, let me pick it up. I gotta.
While you're doing
I
that,
love it. I read that,
great.
Loop, and I was saying, that guy's been listening to our calls.
What? He's been what?
Yeah, he said.
It did kind of sound like it, didn't it?
He read the figure report.
Yeah. You increase the
wait.
value, and it makes it cheaper.
It's not impossible that we've been reading their mail too.
Is that what you've been doing?
Like, go two ways. Like, he's reading our mail, we're reading his mail.
Okay. Wait a minute now. We have got to say we're saying this tongue in cheek. We're kidding, folks. This is not Frank's call. We really don't mean this. Okay.
I kind of do mean it, by the way.
Well, just don't put on a white gown or a white robe or something and try to hold my hand.
Oh, listen.
Get a blue couch.
Just stop.
You know,
People
another
are
good
so
one was
upset about
today.
That. Just whoa. Let's just talk about the dinar. Be so
You know, another
mad.
good one that come out today was the Raffidan Bank is going to prepare the citizens to deposit funds in dinars and dollar.
Yeah,
That was
I did
another
see
good
that.
one.
Very good. Thanks, Andrew. Good stuff. And you're exactly right. Get back on track and get away from the oh brother, where art thou scene where everybody's in white gowns being baptized in the dinar.
Serve.
Yeah. Oh shoot. So,
but seriously, let's talk about that article because there's some very specific stuff in there. Very specific, and there's and you know, once Luke speaks, there's a little direction I'd like to go with this.
I'm trying to find it. I don't see where I posted it.
Oh, you know what? Just click on the blog, dinarupdates.com/blog. It's about halfway down, but same article. Here's yours.
Go ahead, Mr. Wright.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on. I'll
okay.
pick up.
Well, this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he gives you a little bit of history. Yeah. Like I said earlier, he said, hey, they were going to do this. They were going to do this. And what held him up was the instability from ISIS. And he says, when this is resolved, and he lays out a couple scenarios. He says there's calls for bringing it back to what it was previously, although it was, I guess through the translations, he says it was actually higher than what it should have been. But he says the good part of that is it makes the import of goods cheaper. And that's where all the calls for increased purchasing power, that's where that comes from. And then he says, but the downside to this, of having a high value, it makes the export of material too expensive. So he's saying that it should be somewhere closer to the 1.2 dinar per dollar. But the caveat here, folks, is how much is Iraq exporting right now? Other than oil, doesn't matter. They don't have much to export right now, so a high value would not impede their ability to export. And a perfect example about that is China. China exports everything, and that's why their currency is dirt poor. So he talks about actually increasing the value, increasing it. He doesn't say anything about floating it from its current value. He speaks in the context of action being taken on the part of the CBI of increasing the value. And this, he's telling us their plan. This is what they plan on doing. Question is, what's going to be the value? I don't think it's a if. I think all we're talking about is when. Luke, you there?
Yeah, I would be in agreement with you on that. I mean, I'm looking at it, and it's true. It's a very telling article when it comes down to it, and they're talking about increasing it substantially and not having any kind of a measured float or anything like that. In that, I mean, it's definitely loaded with lots of things that are very encouraging to us.
And there's something else too. And you can go to another site where they have a lot of articles and discussion and so forth. And that particular group of people, I'm sure there's plenty of you out there listening to this call that have been on that particular site, and they continue to beat the drum that the current the current value placed on the dinar by the CBI and what it is being sold for or bought and sold on the street, talking about the street rate, that is an indication of what the value will be when the IQD goes international and is traded. That is lunacy. You hear me? That is lunacy to think that the undervalued IQD that operates in a vacuum. The vacuum is Iraq. The situation that is about 15 years old that has created this vacuum of how much the dollar's worth and what the IQD is worth only inside their country. The thought that is going to be reflected of the true value when the CBI decides to satisfy foreign remittances and credits, when they decide to do that day, that it has anything to do with 1186 or 1166 or whatever, it's crazy. It's nuts. It's not so. Of course, that's my opinion, but I think I'm right. Anybody else? I guess not.
I think you're probably right too, Mr. White. We're getting kind of close to the time.
Hey, BGG?
Yeah, I'm ready.
There was one that came from Antoine today about the float itself, and he was using Egypt as the counterpart to the type of float Iraq should be looking at. And to me, I read in it that he was talking along the lines of the managed float. He was talking about two different kinds. You have a pure float, which is obviously what Egypt did, and then you have a managed float, which is what he's opting for.
And really, he wouldn't have disseminated between the two floats unless that's what he was talking about. And that is one of the list of vast numbers of articles that's out there in the last 48 hours about what they intend to or want to do with their own currency. So, just very, very exciting times. Thank you for that, by the way.
Sure.
Do we have time for one more comment here?
Absolutely. We have all kinds of time.
Okay. Here's another little thing to think about. Just recently, within the last couple of days, a lot came out and again reiterated that their reserves are within the accepted international norms, that it could support the value of the currency for whatever, how many times over. Well, we know if the value of their currency that he is speaking of was 1,100 or 1,200, meaning if they satisfied foreign remittances at 1,100 or 1,200 IQD for every $1 that had to be paid out, they would have no reserves left. It would be gone in a heartbeat. So that right there, in my humble opinion, tells you that when he speaks about what their reserves are and what it can cover, he is referring to what they already believe is the true value of the IQD. Otherwise, we know the reserves would be gone in a matter of weeks if they started paying at 1,200 to 1. So there you go. Think about that.
That is exactly the way to end this call. Thank you, everybody. I completely agree. Very odd that the lock is coming out right now and talking about that. He's been very vigorous in his defense of the CBI and the dinar on the last couple of days. Something's up. So appreciate everybody for tuning in tonight. All of our esteemed guests, great contributions. Thank you so much. Stay tuned to Dinar Updates for more Dinar news, Dinar info, and Dinar commentary. We will keep bringing it to you as we're able. Make sure that you join the Deuce list, Dinar Updates Currency Exchange list. not impossible that we're going to need that fairly soon. So it's on the right side of the blog, on the right side of the Observer, on the right side of the forum. The gray box, put your email address, name, and first and last name, and click Add Me. You're on the deuce list. So I'm going to send out some more emails in the next couple of days. So hang in there. Appreciate it, everybody.